This is going to be a laid back, real-time drawing sketch with me session. So hang out, chill out, we're going to draw some cool stuff. I'm going to sketch one of the characters from a comic that I drew a while ago. And before we do that, I'm going to check out some of the cool art that I saw hanging around the internet. Alright, welcome to the Drawing Codex. My name's Mcburnie. I've been a professional working artist for over 20 years. On this channel, we're all about drawing cool stuff from our imagination, embracing the challenge of drawing, and mastering the craft of line and color illustration. This session is for Monday the 24th of October 2022. Although I'm in Australia, that might vary depending on where you are on this planet. I'm going to check out ArtStation, and this is what the front page looks like today. The first thing I saw was this piece by Kieran Yana, which I just thought was like such cool old school fantasy vibes. Again, like a red dragon, but again, this has just been designed so nicely in terms of the composition and the layout. Yeah, just combining all these little sort of touches of blue and the white owl there. Yeah, just like super nicely designed, and again, really sort of evokes that sort of warm, fuzzy feeling of sort of old school Dungeons and Dragons fantasy art that, again, I just always feel drawn to. Although, again, I feel like this is very sort of updated and has that sort of cool modern flair as opposed to kind of, 80s style, fantasy. But anyway, this one was really, really cool. The next thing I saw was this series of images by John Patrick Garnis. And again, I think this was just playing with cool looks for sort of tusks and things on sort of orcs, which I think is always a fun idea. I think I actually saw these on Instagram sort of earlier, but yeah, really, really cool to see them on ArtStation here. A little bit bigger with a little bit more context. Again, that's often the reason I still like ArtStation is, when I'm sort of just looking at stuff, Instagram and, sort of other things are often a lot sort of easier to find stuff, but ArtStation is just so good because we can see it all really sort of big. But yeah, these were really, really fun designs, nicely sort of presented ideas here. And again, just the kind of stuff I think is always sort of fun to do, playing around with sort of fantasy tropes, but again, just sort of pushing it. So yeah, really, really cool designs and also really, really cool rendering. The next thing I saw was a whole bunch of updates by ZW Gu. And yeah, I think, again, like quite a popular sort of well-known artist. And yeah, there was just like a whole sort of massive art dump that they did on ArtStation. I think because they're running a Kickstarter, which actually the art book for that looked really, really cool. And I just sort of picked that up, and I thought it'd be really, really interesting to see how these print, because again, the tonal range for these is quite sort of dark. And yeah, I think if they can print this really well, this will make an awesome, awesome art book. But yeah, just awesome compositions and sort of execution. Just really, really good mix of everything. So there you can see the page, and again, I think again, here's the sort of pitch for the art book, which again, just looked really, really cool. Again, such great sort of tonal range here. Again, like really, really good sense of rendering using those kind of darker blacks. But yeah, just never getting too sort of muddy. It always feels like the tonal range is really, really good. Yeah, and designs and compositions are always good as well. Anyway, let's jump over to the drawing table and do some quick sketching. All right, here we are at the drawing table. Tools for today are a black wing matte pencil. I have a sharpener should I need it, and some sort of kneadable eraser that, again, like a putty style eraser that will sort of come in handy if we need to take some of this back. And I think for today, I'm just going to do some sketching. Here I have a little sort of plan, right? I'm going to do a drawing of one of the characters from my Ara book. And in this case, one of the sort of characters here called Maluk. And again, he's kind of, again, like a morally, virtuously ambiguous character. So he's kind of I guess he's sort of the antagonist in the story to a certain degree. If you want to learn sort of how I do all of the sort of line and color work here, you can check out my free quick start guide. It goes over, my advice for developing a simple, reliable line and color process and workflow. And I talk about going from the thumbnails to the finished product. In the quick start guide, I really focus on the simplest version of the line and color style, but again, this one has a little bit more shading and obviously painted backgrounds, but it all starts with the sort of simple version of this, right? Just sort of flats, flat colors, you know, doing a sketch, doing line work over the top, and again, that's mostly what I sort of discussed there. You get all the brushes and PSDs that I use, you know, sort of in my day-to-day work, and certainly the ones that are involved in the sort of quick start guide image. So go check it out. It's free. The link will be in the description. But yeah, so this is just where I'm going to sort of have a go at sort of sketching around. Again, just doing a warm-up session, and we're going to sort of have a go at the Malouk character. Again, you know, it can be sort of pretty free in terms of how I'm going to you know, interpret the character. Not exactly sure which sort of costume to go with, but this is sort of the little sort of thumbnail plan I did, just kind of thinking out loud. Yeah, so let's see. Again, we're sort of going to have a head up here somewhere, right? Again, using basically the same constructional sort of methodology that we would find in the Loomis method or other constructive anatomy sort of systems. I'm sort of making the sphere of the head, chopping it up, dividing it up into planes, and yeah, see, I'll probably go and I'll get the reference for exactly what that sort of character looks like in a minute. But I'll just kind of rough it in here and see how we go. All right. Boom, boom, boom. Again, massing in some sort of rhythms and larger kind of forms here. And just doing this lightly. So again, the goal here is to make sure that, you know, it's very light, hard to see exactly what's going on, just enough so that you can kind of put it down. So let's think about where that sort of spine is going to be, and then we'll kind of place a rough indication of the rib cage. All right, and then after that, after that, I'll sort of place in some of the other features. Just trying to make sure we get the general sort of head to torso placement right, because again, the character sort of really kind of hunches down. All right, so I think that's kind of more where that center will be. So again, the first sort of rough placement is just there to sort of, you know, check things, make sure that they're okay. If it's not, just redraw it. Now this character has, again, quite wide shoulders, but they do sort of stoop down quite a little bit. All right, so we've got a neck here, boom, and we got our center line, boom. So again, if you want any sort of more, like if you want a more broken down sort of version of what I'm doing, you can check out a lot of the tutorials that sort of go on the channel that go into this stuff in a little bit more detail. Again, I'm just kind of free flow sketching here and sort of seeing what will happen. So again, I think either this again, this head probably needs to be a little bit smaller, or this torso needs to be a little bit bigger. And I find, especially in the beginning, right, when it's you know, haven't been sketching all, you know, weekend, or, you know, just kind of not in that mood and that flow for drawing, it does take a while to get everything sort of flowing again from a proportional standpoint. So again, you know, just got to be careful. Easy does it. Double, triple check your proportions. Make sure again you've got a nice little sort of section there in your process where you say, hey, is everything going all right? Right? Is this kind of working? Boom, 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 boom. Again, so kind of okay there. Right, now let's try and just roughly place in, just shape-wise, right, some of these other sort of details so I know what the overall sort of character is going to look like. So this is where, yeah, I sort of talk about the mannequin, or that sort of simple version of the character. Needs to kind of be able to represent what the character, you know, actually sort of does, right? What that costume has on it. All those little details as well. And got kind of these sort of ears like that, and then we've got some sort of horns that come out like this, and then they kind of go back. And I'm just going to do sort of shorter versions of these. Right, and then we've got some sort of hair comes down here, and I think super important to his character are these kind of long strands of hair, right, that really kind of come down here, and they sort of have these rings in them. Boom, boom. All right, let's see what other things we can do, right, just at this rough stage. Right. So again, might do a few slight costume modifications, because I really think, again, one of the things that be good for this character is to, yeah, make it feel a little bit more ragged, right? Make everything feel a little bit more ragged. Oh, got some stuff back there. Alright, so here we've got these deltoids. Let's put in where those pectoral muscles would be, and see if we can link some of this stuff up. So visualizing again where that neck is going to be, where the collarbone is going to come along. Boom. See if I can put that in. Got sort of an arm here, and again, as I kind of adjust things, I'm kind of looking at what I had in terms of proportion, and I'm sort of tweaking it. So, you know, we kind of block it in, and it doesn't necessarily mean you need to slavishly follow the plan you had. What it's about is sort of giving you a few different sort of stabs at it, right? So it's a matter of, again, having a process where, you know, we have a few passes at any sort of particular thing. Boom. There we go, and bump, 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 bump. So again, we're going to sort of sketch out around here. All right, and what I'll do next is we'll just sort of check the reference and see how sort of quick or close we've been now that we're sort of, you know, drawing this pretty fast. So again, I always like to go back to that original sort of concept art and try and sort of look at the, you know, the basic sort of structure that was there, right, and try and sort of go from that. So again, looking at sort of this original thing, and then kind of seeing how that was kind of interpreted, right, and sort of how we sort of managed to adjust that here, So again, I kind of like these horns better than the ones that sort of ended up on the final character. Again, it was like an interesting idea, but a bit of a pain to draw. So yeah, let's have a go. Let's sort of see how we can incorporate that in. So yeah, again, I kind of like the idea of having, right, maybe some sort of smaller little sort of horn nubbin things, and then right, the actual horn is kind of coming up here. That's like a much simpler thing to draw. Let's check that across, see how we go. Boom, boom, boom. And then again, got the hair coming up here. And this hair, right, is going to fold over here. And yeah, maybe we could try and put some of that fur stuff into the silhouette, because again, that will always sort of look cool, create some interesting shape, dynamic pops and stuff like that. Again, I like here that he kind of has, again, on this one he doesn't have the, right, this, again, and on this one he doesn't have that there. So if we pull this down, pull. But I like the extra little things that are kind of hanging down here. I think that's an extra touch. Often if I'm, if I'm sort of designing a character for comics, I'll, that kind of thing will end up on the cutting room floor, as it were, because it's just a pain to draw again and again and again. So again, pretty sort of lean. And here, the idea is we have quite like a high brow, right? Or at least we sort of have like a prominent brow, right? This kind of mass here, right? Well, let's see if we can construct this nose a bit more to get center. And here, again, it's not that long really, right? It's got this kind of big nose, and then not far under, got this big sort of chin, right? Again, probably like a bit of a Mignola Hellboy-esque sort of design choice there. I was probably looking at a lot of and fanning out a lot of Mignola stuff at the time. And, yeah, just a sort of a cool little sort of design aesthetic. But yeah, again, the thing is, it sort of really sort of juts out quite a bit, and this sort of chin pops forward. Alright, so again, the eyes are like pretty keen, pretty serious and important here. Let's see if we can put those in. So again, have some of that eyebrow action going on. Just do a double check for proportions. So again, a number of ways we can do that. I can sort of tilt this up, right? So I'm sort of looking at it a little bit at an angle, and I can just, sort of double check like where the center is and how all of that alignment is going. Because again, when we're when we're doing this type of sketching, right, there's a lot of interpretation that's going on. So, you know, we're sort of visualizing that center and, you know, seeing how that would sort of go. Some other sort of hoop earring things. So again, it's pretty sketchy. I might have like another sort of pass at it, just having a quick look. So again, this is not the best sort of demo, I guess, because you can't really see it that well, but it is super, super important to remember to do it. So think of it that way. Think of it as this is like one of the most important things you should do with your drawing. And yeah, I would say almost universally every single time I sort of do that, you know, I kind of think, I probably don't need to do it. It'll probably be fine. You know, come on, it looks okay. And then again, you kind of actually look at it from, you know, a decent sort of angle, and yeah, it's always a complete mess. Not a complete mess, but it's always like worse than I imagine. So again, just doing a bit of cleanup, but I think I'll probably, you know, again, just keep this like a quick sort of warm-up sketch, right? So not gonna erase it all the way down and try and get some sort of crazy finish. Again, lean into that sketchy aesthetic. All right. So again, here we have these kind of little sort of horn things. Got some hair, right, coming there, and then let's see if we can do what I had in that other concept art, right, where we wrap a few things around it. Again, a few little trinkets or bits and pieces, maybe sticking on there. And again, maybe thinking about adding a bit of quick texture or something there. So again, the foreshortening here is like quite, you know, a challenge probably to get it exactly right. Again, I'm doing a lot of sort of guesstimation, but having these things wrapping around as a design choice, although it is extra stuff to draw, it does make this kind of it helps to describe form a lot better, which is often why you know, we sort of put it on designs, even though it's not, you know, it's like a little bit of a cheap trick from a design point of view, but yeah, it does really make things a lot easier to read because you can sort of describe where that form is going. All right, so let's see if we can put this in. Again, get some sort of ring there. Another one here. Yeah, and so this is like the level of sketchiness here. Again, is a good balance between, you know, going for a detailed kind of look, you know, and also practicing structure, right? So again, you always have to be very clear, or at least I recommend being very clear about what your intentions are every time you go to sketch. Is this something where I'm trying to hit a higher level of polish, right? Because again, the approach I would take would be sort of different, right? But I think it is possible to sort of, you know, maybe push the aesthetic a little bit, you know, try and make it look as nice as you can, but really think, you know, about how to, you know, think about how to work the drawing from a heavily sort of structural standpoint, right? So basically we just, you know, focus on structure. And yeah, don't worry too much about, you know, finish. So you'll end up with something that's a bit messy, but it might have some sort of interesting qualities, right? So again, not quite sure on his sort of eyes, because I designed them initially as like these kind of really closed eyes, and I'm always trying to say, well, how could we actually get some, right, some sort of extra emotion there? But I think the reality is that, yeah, they need to be kind of sneaky, sort of closed eyes, right? Because he's sort of a fairly sort of closed off character. And again, good to kind of see if we can open up that mouth a little bit. All right. Draw in that ear bump. So yeah, just some quick sketching for this session. Again, I always get sort of roped into, doing maybe sort of doing more than I initially sort of intend, but I really think it's, if you're working on your sketching ritual, you're trying to sort of get this happening, as much as possible. It's super important to be able to fit it into the time you have, right? So I want to try to do some that are a little bit quicker, more manageable, right? Again, in that sort of half-hour time frame, because I feel like, again, if you can really sort of fine-tune your sketching ritual, and your practice for how long things take, I think you find you get more done. I even notice it doing these kind of videos, right? Because if I sort of get into the groove of like trying to be like, oh no, let's do like something really cool, spend an hour and a half on it, it's harder for me to find an hour and a half in my day to to fit this in. Whereas if it's kind of, if you find that right amount, like half an hour, 15 minutes or whatever, and you really like drill it, you focus, you try and develop your abilities so you get the most out of that time, then I think if you find that sweet spot, that's when, in my experience, a lot of the magic happens, right? Becomes a lot easier to then go and, just repeat, because you found that sort of time that sort of tends to appear in your life, right? That sort of fits you. And yeah, if you do that, then, from my experience, I found, again, more art happens by itself. Right. So again, I kind of like the idea of this hair being a little bit raggedy. Right, so he's kind of put it together, but it's still a bit sort of rough. Again, these horns are looking a little bit sort of rough too. All right. So again, even if you're sketching, focus on developing and building and refining your ability to have a hierarchy of detail in your work, right? So I've tried to get that sort of face looking right, and one of the things that I find really helped me when I was trying to do work that's a little bit sketchier, let's say, again, is leaning into that hierarchy of detail and understanding that even if it's a sketch, right, even if it's not sort of finished, we still pay attention to the illustrative things, right? All of the theory that you would find in the best and brightest illustration texts, right, that talk about composition, how to direct the eye, how to get a a good feeling of a finish, etc. Again, it's mainly a matter of, in my experience, trying to sort of find where's that hierarchy of detail. Where do I want to look? and, you know, putting most of the effort there, and just making sure that, again, you know, this stuff, right, is less important. And if you I think it's sort of, it can feel a little bit counterintuitive, right? Because often, if you're looking, and this would happen to me, I would look at people whose sketchiness I really admired, and, you know, it sort of felt just like sort of they were, you know, stopping halfway, and, you know, just kind of not doing stuff, and you know, they're being very efficient with it, and it was that sort of efficiency that drew me to that sort of style. And the thing is, I think a lot of what makes that work, and what makes, you know, one person's sort of sketchy mess better than someone else's sketchy mess, is often, again, like good sound application of basic sort of illustrative ideas, right? Again, as I was saying, like trying to have a 1, 2, 3 read, a hierarchy of detail. All right, what's the first thing? Okay, the face, right? Let's see if we can sort of plus that, right? Like, just, you know, get as much, you know, sort of detail there as possible. Boom, boom. Again, you could easily overshoot, end up with too much. That's totally fine. Just take it back or try again. But yeah, and there's other areas over here where, you know, we're probably going to have a little bit less. And, you know, that's not just okay. It's kind of what you need to let the drawing kind of sit properly, right? I think he actually has these kind of straps that go around. Boom, 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 boom. And over here, again, just putting that stuff in super rough. And again, that you refine that through, I think, you know, really trying to stick to that time, you know, because that's when you kind of say, like, oh, okay, this is how I'm going to make this work, despite it not being finished, right, or not having as much time, right? We just think of it as an illustration. We think of it as something that has a lot of sort of finish and polish to it. But instead of finish and polish, we just think of, or instead of saying, like, okay, the focal area is going to have, you know, this sort of intense level of detail, you know, and everything else is, we got to sort of tone it back or whatever. You kind of say, well, you know, no, the focal area is going to have, yeah, it's going to be sketchy. It's going to be less sketchy than the rest of it, right? And we just kind of work backwards. And again, I found in general that kind of process has worked well for me. As a framework for understanding, and you know, again, making those decisions where it's like, I gotta, you know, we gotta sort of figure out what I'm gonna do to make this not feel, you know, like a sketchy mess, right? Because again, you know, a lot of these marks that I'm making are kind of just, you know, nothing marks, right? It's just kind of messing about. All right, so yeah, I think again, I'll focus on the silhouette still, right? Try and, you know, keep that sort of clean. But again, you know, that's it. A little sort of warm-up sketch. Yeah, so thanks for hanging out. Thanks for watching. We'll catch you in the next one, and until then, happy drawing.